Since the moment we met, Emily had always been the heart of our small family. She had this contagious energy that just made everyone around her feel more comfortable and relaxed. I knew she was something special the minute we crossed paths at a friend's party, and here we were, 19 years later, still going strong. My career as a cop had worn me down, but somehow Emily always knew how to lighten the load on my shoulders, even without trying. She wasn't just my wife. She was my closest friend, someone who always believed in the good in people, even when I had grown doubtful over the years. Retirement had been a mixed bag for me, leaving behind the fast-paced life of a police officer for a quieter one as a contractor. While Emily stayed busy with her job as an executive assistant at Harper Global, I found comfort in our routine, managing the house and raising our son, Ethan. But that evening, things started to feel different in a way I wasn't prepared for. It was close to 5:30 p.m., and Emily, my wife of almost 20 years, still hadn't made it home from work or even called. Usually, she was home around 4 o'clock since her job at Harper Global ran early in the day. After her old boss, Daniel Harper, passed away 2 years ago, his daughter Claire took over the company, keeping Emily on as her trusted assistant. Ethan had already come home from school and was upstairs racing through his homework, eager to watch TV afterward. By 5:45, my concern started growing, so I called Emily's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left her a message, telling her to call me back. Not long after, she walked in, balancing a few bags from Marco's Italian restaurant. She leaned over to give me a quick kiss on the cheek on her way to the kitchen. "Sorry, Matt, I had to work late, and I didn't get anything out for dinner, so I picked up some takeout from Marco's. I hope that's okay." "Sure," I said, though I couldn't shake the worry. "But why didn't you call?" "Oh, I forgot to charge my phone last night, and by the time I got to the car to call, it was dead." One of my few pet peeves with Emily was that her phone was often either off, dead, or on silent, so getting in touch with her could be frustrating. When I brought it up, she'd always say, "You're right, Matt. I'll do better." She'd remember for a few days, but before long, we were back to the same issue. It was annoying, but I'd learned to live with it. During dinner, Emily was in a great mood, though most of the conversation revolved around Ethan, who was excited about his upcoming baseball tryouts and annoyed by the pile of homework his math teacher, Mrs. Evans, kept assigning. We always let Ethan watch TV until 9 p.m., but early on, we agreed he wouldn't have a TV in his room, something he still grumbled about. There wasn't one in our room either, as we wanted to keep distractions from sleep and quality time together to a minimum. We managed to stay close at least 4 times a week, which made us stand out compared to our friends, who all seemed glued to their multiple TVs. Some folks even had a TV in the kitchen. Let me give you some background. I'm Matt Sullivan, and my wife Emily and I like to do things a little differently. I retired last year at 50 after working 25 years as a patrol sergeant with the county police. Thanks to the state's retirement system for military vets, I was able to count my 4 years as an Army Ranger toward my police retirement. Essentially, the system allowed me and other vets to buy back our service time and add it to our police pensions by paying into the fund. With the physical toll of both police work and part-time handyman jobs over the years, I've managed to stay in good shape. At 5 feet 11 inches, I don't carry much body fat. Since retiring, I've turned my side gig into a full-time contracting business, relying on connections I made over the years while doing small home improvement projects. I don't need to advertise. Word of mouth keeps me plenty busy. Emily, who will turn 45 next month, was 25 when we got married. I was 31 and just starting my police career. We met at a friend's party, and I was instantly drawn to her. All these years later, she still has the same wavy brown hair, those blue eyes, and the smile that caught my attention. At 5 feet 8 inches, she's still the same size as when we met. Besides her good looks, it was Emily's bright personality that won me over. She tends to see the good in people, something I've become more cynical about after years in law enforcement. She earns a solid salary as an executive assistant at a mid-sized international company, and together with my business, we live comfortably. We're best friends, respect each other, and have always kept our marriage balanced. We share the responsibilities, parenting, cooking, household chores, you name it. Of course, some things are split by default. Emily won't touch the yard work, and I stay far away from the laundry after ruining a few of her blouses by mixing colors. Ethan had gone to the living room to watch TV, and I was helping Emily clean up the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. Usually, after cleaning up, we'd sit down with a cup of coffee before heading to the den to either talk or read. Tonight was no different. As Emily set the coffee in front of me, she casually said, "Connie got promoted to head up our London office, and if you don't mind, we're planning to go out for dinner and maybe dance a little tomorrow night." To be honest, I didn't keep track of her work friends, so I couldn't remember who Connie was. But I didn't want to come off as uninterested, so I kept quiet. Still, the part about dancing caught my attention. "Just the two of you dancing?" "Of course," she said. "It'll only be a couple of hours, and I'll be back by 11. I wasn't thrilled, but since she rarely went out like some of our friends' wives, I agreed. The moment Connie asked if everything was all right, I knew I had to play it cool. I forced a smile. "Absolutely. Ready to go?" Glancing back up the stairs, I felt his hand gently guide me out the door. Inside, Joe stood at the top of the stairs, watching me kiss Connie on the cheek. I could feel his eyes on me as I glanced up, and I swear he saw a smirk cross my face. Connie wrapped his arm around my waist as we left, and I knew Joe was furious. Joe's anger wasn't just directed at me, but also at himself for not stopping me. I could feel it in the way he looked at me. He probably thought I was disrespecting our marriage, taking a risk. He had been blindsided. Yesterday, I told him about dinner and dancing with a colleague, and I was careful not to use any pronouns like he or him, just Connie. I figured he wouldn't remember that brief introduction from a year ago at an office party, and it seemed I was right, until now. In the car, Connie was making small talk, but I wasn't really paying attention. I was still upset with Joe. When Connie asked, "What do you think?" I snapped back into the moment. "Sorry, Connie," my mind drifted, I replied. He smiled. "No worries. I was just asking what you thought about having dinner at the Chop House in the Marriott. There's a great dance club there, too." "That sounds lovely," I responded, pushing the argument with Joe out of my head. Connie noticed something, though. "Everything okay, hon? You seemed upset when you came downstairs. And from the way your husband looked at me, I got the feeling he wasn't exactly thrilled about our date." His choice of words didn't bother me. I had known Connie for 2 years, and plenty of men call their female friends hon. As for the date, well, loosely speaking, it was, just not in the way Joe saw it. "You're right," I said. "I think Joe was expecting Connie to be a girlfriend, not you." Connie chuckled and gave my hand a squeeze. "Listen, if you want to cancel, I completely understand. I'd be disappointed, though. You look stunning, and I was really looking forward to dancing with you tonight." "Absolutely not," I said, a little more forcefully than I meant to. "I'm looking forward to dinner and showing off your dancing skills." I smiled to lighten the mood, adding with a playful tone, "But remember, I'm a married woman, and I promise to be home by midnight." Back home, Joe and Tommy ate dinner, but Joe couldn't enjoy his meal. Tommy asked when I'd be back, and Joe, having told him I was out with a girlfriend, didn't want to complicate things. Joe's anger festered. By 11:11, he sent Tommy off to bed and then took up his spot in the living room, waiting for me to return. At the Chop House, Connie and I had a great dinner. I let the compliments he showered on me about being beautiful and sexy wash over me. When we started dancing, I forgot about everything. Joe, the argument, all of it. We danced non-stop, only taking breaks when a slow song played. After a few more drinks, I started to feel lightheaded but pushed through. Back home, Joe's patience was wearing thin. By 1 a.m., after several calls to my phone went unanswered, he left a final, angry voicemail, telling me I had destroyed our marriage. His frustration kept him awake. At the Marriott, Connie and I were still dancing when I started feeling dizzy. He led me off the dance floor, and before I knew it, we were in a room upstairs. My mind was foggy, my body unsteady, and things went further than I had ever imagined. The alcohol had taken over, and I was powerless to stop what was happening. I wanted to speak, to push him away, but no words came out. By 5 a.m., Joe finally gave in to exhaustion, convinced our marriage was over. He barely slept, and when the phone rang at 7 a.m., his heart sank when he didn't recognize the number. He answered, only to hear the voice of Terry, an old patrol officer he used to work with. Terry's voice was hesitant. "Joe, Your wife's at Mercy Hospital. She came in last night and reported that she had been sexually attacked. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, feeling utterly lost. I had been waiting for Joe to arrive, needing his strength, but as soon as I saw him, the weight of everything came crashing down. I couldn't look at him. I felt like I had failed him, like I was no longer the wife he had married. Joe sat beside me in silence, and though I could feel his presence, it was hard to meet his gaze. A deep sense of shame washed over me. The thought of explaining what had happened, of reliving every painful detail, was unbearable. How could I possibly find the words to tell him? I kept thinking he must be so angry, so disappointed. I didn't even know where to start. Joe finally broke the silence. "Elaine," he said softly, "I need to understand what happened. I'm here for you, but I need you to talk to me. Please." The sound of his voice cracked something inside me, and I sobbed even harder. I don't know how this happened, Joe. I didn't mean for any of it." I trailed off, struggling to string the words together. Joe's jaw tightened, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. His frustration was palpable, but beneath it, there was concern, fear, and something else. Maybe confusion, or a desperate need for answers. "What do you mean you don't know, Elaine? You didn't mean for what? What happened?" I took a deep, shaky breath. My heart raced as the pieces of the night came together in my mind. The drinks, the sudden dizziness, the feeling of being powerless. I was at the club. I only had one drink there, Joe. Just one. But I think he drugged me. Joe's face grew darker. He? Who the hell are you talking about, Elaine? It was someone I thought I could trust. I didn't realize until it was too late, I whispered, choking on my words. I couldn't move. I couldn't fight back. He. Joe's eyes flared with anger as I said it, the rage building inside him. "Who is he, Elaine? Who did this to you?" I could see the fury in his face, and a part of me wanted to stop, to protect him from this, to not burden him with what I had endured. But he needed to know, and I needed him to know. "Jake," I said, barely above a whisper. "It was Jake?" Joe stood up so quickly his chair toppled over. "Jake? Jake did this to you?" His fists clenched tightly at his sides. "That son of a bitch." He turned toward the door, ready to storm out and find him. "Joe, no." I pleaded, reaching for his arm. "Please don't leave me. I can't face this without you. I need you here with me." He froze, his back to me, fists still clenched. After what felt like an eternity, he finally turned around, his face a mixture of anger and pain. "I swear to God, Elaine, I'll make him pay for what he did to you. But I need to understand everything. Tell me the whole truth." I nodded, wiping the tears from my face. I knew he deserved the full story, no matter how painful it was for both of us. This was our reality now, and we had to face it together. I took another deep breath, preparing to relive the nightmare, but knowing Joe would be by my side through it all. How could I even begin to apologize for ignoring Ryan's concerns, only to end up being used by someone who saw me as nothing more than a target? In the light of day, I realized it had been a date. No matter how innocent my intentions were, I had gone out to dinner and dancing with a man who wasn't my husband. As I lay there, I kept thinking about how I would feel if the roles were reversed. What if Ryan had told me he was going out with a friend named Andy, and it turned out Andy was Andrea, a younger, more attractive woman he wanted to reward for some reason? Ryan's voice broke through my thoughts. "Susan, the detectives will be in here soon to take your statement. Be ready. Some of their questions will be embarrassing and invasive. If you're saying the sex happened because you were mentally out of it from pills or booze, you have to be honest. If you try to mislead them, they'll know." The lead detective has over 30 years of experience. He'll see through anything. His cold tone caught me off guard, and only two words stuck with me: claim and deception. Worse still, he hadn't even touched me. No comfort, no warmth. He sounded more like a lawyer than my husband. Even through the tears, anger started bubbling up, and I finally snapped. "Ryan, it sounds like you don't believe me. I waited for you before I said anything because you've known me for over 20 years. You know that while what I did was dumb, I never intended to cheat. let alone get attacked by someone I trusted as a friend. Damn it, Ryan. I was drugged and violated. But I guess you don't see it that way, so just leave. Go hang out with your cop buddies. I turned away, furious, my tears drying up as rage took over. I heard his chair scrape the tile floor, and moments later, the privacy curtain opened and closed. He was gone, probably for good. When I went back to the waiting room, I noticed Mike, one of the officers, looking up with a questioning expression. His partner, who seemed pretty irritated, sat across the room with her arms crossed. "Thanks, Mike," I said sincerely, knowing full well that his actions today might cause him trouble. "You can go in now," he nodded, then added, "For the record, I provoked her anger on purpose, and I believe she's telling the truth." His partner reluctantly followed him into the cubicle. 45 minutes later, as I sat there, Dr. Nadell found me in the now crowded waiting room. He gestured for me to follow him down the hall to a small exam room. His tone was much softer than earlier. The lab results show a significant amount of rohypnol and ketamine in her system. These are commonly known as date rape drugs, and when combined, they lower inhibitions while impairing the body's ability to fight back. He paused, glancing at his notes. "I've explained this to the detectives and given them a copy of the report. I've started in 4 to help clear her system. She should be able to leave in a few hours." As he turned to go, I stopped him. "Doctor, can I ask you a few more questions?" He looked uncomfortable, his job as attending physician seemingly complete, but he nodded. I sat back down, and in a measured tone, he said, "Mr. Parker, these drugs don't prevent someone from feeling things. Even though her brain might not have been fully there, her body can still react." He added, "To answer your question, yes, it's possible she experienced physical pleasure even though she had no control. This can add to the trauma, as victims often feel betrayed by their own bodies." As he walked out, I noticed Mike and his partner waiting. Mike approached me while she stood back, looking a bit less hostile. "Ryan, you've got 20 years of experience, so I won't sugarcoat it. I'm sorry for what happened, but based on her statement and the lab results, I'm confident she was drugged and attacked. It probably happened when she went to the restroom. She had no idea what was happening and doesn't remember much." I stayed silent, listening as he continued. "Now, here's the tough part. I hate to say it, but I wouldn't recommend pursuing charges against this guy. Even though I'm with you, Ryan, you know the legal system. If he gets a good lawyer, they'll argue that she went on a date with him. They'll make it seem like she took the drugs voluntarily. Defense attorneys will drag her through the mud, and both of you will be humiliated. Your son might face backlash, and in the end, this guy could still walk free." I stayed quiet, letting his words sink in. He softened his tone. "Talk to your wife. In the end, it's her choice, but I need to know what you want to do before I go. I can file this as an unfortunate situation, and it'll stay buried. You don't have to worry about charges or a false report." When it was suggested that my attacker might walk free, I lost it. No one believes me. Not the doctor, not the cops, and not even my husband. I started to sob. Ryan grabbed my hand again, but this time he didn't let go. "Susan, we all believe you. This isn't about that. It's about sparing you the humiliation of a trial. The media will crucify us, and the odds of winning are slim." Reluctantly, I agreed. Harvey buried the story, and we never heard from the DA. Unfortunately, not all stories have happy endings. Counseling was tough, especially when Susan shared that in the middle of the assault, she thought it was me for a moment. That was something I couldn't shake. Over the next 8 months, our relationship unraveled. The real damage wasn't from the assault. It was the betrayal, the kiss she gave that man, and the look she shot me before leaving with him. Even if it was out of spite, I couldn't forgive that. We divorced 2 years ago. I let her keep the house until Tommy graduates. The company settled with her, though they denied any wrongdoing. We're both moving forward, but the wounds run deep. Here I am, walking it, one step at a time. Elaine and I thought we had it all figured out. For nearly 2 decades, we built a life together, raised our son, and shared more memories than I can count. But life, as I've learned, has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Trust was shattered, and once that happens, it's almost impossible to put the pieces back together in the same way. We tried. God knows we tried. But in the end, we both knew it was over. Maybe it had been for longer than either of us wanted to admit. The fallout from Elaine's encounter with Conrad and the subsequent lawsuit was like a wrecking ball through our already fragile relationship. We got some measure of justice when Conrad lost his job, but it was too late for us. The damage had been done. Elaine moved on faster than I expected. At first, it stung. I'd see her with her new guy. Let's call him Jim. And that familiar pang of jealousy would hit. He's younger, a widower, and from what I can tell, a decent man. But seeing them together reminded me of everything I had lost, of the life we had built that was now nothing more than memories. Over time, though, those feelings began to fade. I guess I realized that Elaine deserved happiness, even if it wasn't with me anymore. She wasn't the same woman I married, and I wasn't the same man. We had grown apart, and it wasn't fair to either of us, or to Tommy, for that matter, to keep pretending. Speaking of Tommy, he's the one constant through all of this. Watching him grow up has been the silver lining in an otherwise stormy chapter of my life. He's strong, resilient, and smart. Everything I could have hoped for in a son. The divorce wasn't easy on him, but we did our best to shield him from the worst of it. He didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of our mess, and I'm proud of how we handled it, keeping his well-being at the forefront. As for me, I found someone too. Alicia. She came into my life when I wasn't looking for anything, just a customer needing some work done on her house. Her divorce was uglier than mine. Her ex-husband was a drunk and an abuser, the kind of guy who put her in the hospital one too many times. Over the past year, we've built something real, something honest. It's different from what I had with Elaine, but in a good way. We're taking things slow, partly for the kid's sake. Her son, Kevin, is about the same age as Tommy, and the two have become fast friends. It's nice, seeing them hang out and enjoy themselves without the weight of adult problems on their shoulders. Alicia and I haven't moved in together yet, and maybe that's for the best. We're both cautious about diving into marriage again, and honestly, I'm okay with that. For now, this is enough. Then there's Mario. He was never the kind of guy you'd call a friend, but our paths crossed more times than I'd like to admit when I was on the force. He was trouble, an enforcer for the Irish mob, and someone I had arrested more than once. But life is strange, and 3 months after everything went down with Elaine, I ran into him again. We talked, and a few days later, he called me. Told me he had something for me. I didn't know what to expect, but when he opened that trunk and showed me the jar, I was speechless. Inside was Conrad's manhood, literally. Mario grinned and told me that Conrad would never hurt anyone again. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. All I knew was that justice, in some twisted way, had been served. I've never shared that with anyone, not even Alicia. And while I can't condone what Mario did, I can't say I wasn't relieved. The man who caused so much pain in my life, in Elaine's life, had finally paid a price. It wasn't the kind of justice I expected, but it was justice nonetheless. Now, 2 years after the divorce, Elaine and I are in a better place. We've both moved on, found new lives, and while the scars of what happened will always be there, they don't hurt like they used to. Life has a way of healing, even when you think it can't. Elaine got the house, and when Tommy turns 18, it'll stay hers. I don't begrudge her that. She earned it, in more ways than one. I've done well enough with my contracting business to take care of myself and Tommy. And while I was bitter at first about how things turned out, I've come to realize that we're both stronger for it. Looking back, I can see now that those 19 years weren't wasted. They were filled with love, laughter, and plenty of good memories. But sometimes, even the best of things come to an end. Elaine was my wife, my best friend, and for a long time, my partner in life. But we both made mistakes, and in the end, we couldn't fix what was broken. So, I keep moving forward, rebuilding, step by step. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful. Life has surprised me before, and I have no doubt it will again. But whatever comes next, I'm ready.